Edu-Magicians, welcome to the Edu-Magic Podcast with your host, Dr. Sam Fessich. Dr. Sam is a professor of education, author of Edu-Magic, and a pumpkin spice latte fan. This podcast is designed for pre-service teachers. Remember, friends, teaching doesn't begin at graduation, but during that first class at 8 a.m. Let's get this party started.
Hi, I'm Steve Miletto from the Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hey Edu-Magicians, it's Sam, and before we start into this episode, I want to share with you about an amazing resource. It's called the Educator Candidate Member Portal. AAEE provides you with resources such as virtual job fairs, a job board, interview tips and prep, resume building, webinars. You can even get a copy of the Job Search Handbook digitally. So head on over to aaee.org and create your free Educator Candidate Member account today. Friends, one more thing before we get started. This episode is brought to you by my new course, Digital Portfolios from Scratch to Interview Ready. Head on over to sfessich.com/courses for more information about this self-paced, hands-on virtual workshop. Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Edu-Magic Podcast. My name is Dr. Sam Fessich, and today I have with me Michelle Randall, and she's going to be sharing tips for our new teachers in the crowd. So if you just graduated in December, or if you're looking towards graduation in May, you're going to want to turn up the volume, grab some paper and a pen, or maybe document some notes on your phone, because she's going to be sharing some tips for you as we enter into the new school year, our 2021 school year. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So before we jump in, Michelle, with all these tips and strategies for our new teachers, can you please share about your role in education?
Yes, I have the dream job. It's the job that I feel like my whole career has prepared me for. So I am a new teacher mentor. And that means that I get to sort of, mentor brand new first and second year teachers through, those years. And I get to sort of provide emotional support for them, navigating those, these years. And I provide professional, advice. Basically, I work with first year students through our instructional framework in our district. So it's all about helping them to sort of reflect upon their practice and to think about, how might they raise the level of their practice.
Oh, I love that. Tell me more about the instructional framework that you use.
Well, ours comes from actually University of Washington, from the Center for Educational Leadership. And it's basically 5 domains. And then under each domain, there are 5 sort of indicators. And then it's a rubric. So the domains are things like, for example, classroom environment and community, culture, classroom environment and culture, or assessment, or student engagement, professional collaboration, communication, curriculum and pedagogy. And so then under each of those big domains, there are these indicators that kind of talk about, what some of those, it kind of breaks it down, I guess. So for example, let's say in CEC, classroom environment and culture, there might be use of learning time. Mm-hmm. And so then that includes, all of the things you might think it is in terms of maybe some classroom management, positive student teacher relationships. And then it's on a rubric. So, a lot of teachers come in at basic or even sometimes unsatisfactory, which is really a horrible sort of, I think, word for what they are. They're new and they're starting. And so our job is just to support them in reflecting where they are and where they want to go.
That sounds like a great framework, not only for new teachers, but for practicing educators or veteran teachers as well.
It is, and it is actually used for our whole district. What happens is when you're a new teacher, you're considered comprehensive. So your evaluator is looking at all the domains and all of the indicators. So it's very overwhelming, and there's so much there. And so once you get more experienced, you are considered focused. So you can, you kind of choose your focus area. But our new teachers, they're just, everything's coming at them. Excuse me. And so, my job and my team's job is to really just help them navigate that whole thing.
And where did this passion for helping new teachers, when did it start? How did this journey begin, working with our new teachers in the classroom?
I think it really began when I myself was a teacher, and I've had teaching experience all over the world, and including then also in my home state in public education. And as I became more experienced in my own teaching, I just found myself naturally kind of mentoring, new teachers, whether they were new to my particular team or new to the school. And I really enjoyed being able to help them. And I often reflected that, a lot of times all teachers, but especially our new teachers, I always used to say, I wish they had a counselor. Our children have counselors in the schools, but our teachers need them too. And I just felt like that would be such a perfect job for me, to sort of just, again, kind of provide that support, but with a professional lens and a lens toward helping them to improve practice, to, of course, improve student outcomes. So this mentoring job, when I finally decided to come back to the States and repatriate, I couldn't believe that there was actually a job that fit exactly what I wanted to do.
That's so cool. I love how you start off saying I'm doing my dream job, and it's amazing, and it's so interesting to hear how it came about so organically and just naturally from the need to help new educators professionally understand what it means to be a teacher on the other side of the desk, because student teaching only shows us so much, but really to be a new teacher first year, what's there to expect? How can I get better? Because whenever we're first year teachers, it is rough. We get the t-shirt, we all get through it, but to have that extra support is just phenomenal.
Yes, it's a real privilege, and we're funded. A lot of our funding comes from a grant through Washington State, and the idea is that we need to keep our teachers. They are gold. They are precious, and they are leaving. They're leaving our profession, and we don't want that because that's not good for kids. So we want to nurture them. We want to keep them. We want to grow them, and we have to really realize, how precious they are. Sadly, reality sets in, and we don't always get to make decisions that are best for our first year teachers in terms of placement, in terms of all kinds of things. So at least we can offer them, the mentorship, which, is the idea is to retain them, to keep them in the building, keep them in the district, or at least keep them in the profession.
They are essential. They are essential. Absolutely. So, Michelle, would you be able to, let's start off with some tips for planning and prep. If we have new graduates coming in January, maybe they're taking over from maternity leave or a substitute position, or even for our grads in May, what are some tips that you have when it comes to planning for your classroom and preparing for lessons?
I would say that the general things, which is expect to put in time, because that is when you're new at something, you have to have time to practice. You have to have time to do it. The planning is absolutely essential. And you have to be very sort of intentional about it. So, and then give yourself grace that you will find a rhythm that will work for you. And everybody has their different sort of, I myself as a teacher always left in the afternoon as though, okay, when I come back, the next day when I come back, I'm ready to go. That's how I worked like that. And I did have to put time in on the weekends. I see teachers do that. I think in a larger sort of way to think about it too is when you are planning, be intentional about equity. be really intentional about how, how are you going to build in times to, to build in relationship. Be intentional with that planning and realize that you do have to plan it out. You might have colleagues next door that it looks like they don't, that it just comes naturally to them without a plan. But when you're first starting, you really need to plan that whole day, and really kind of, know what you want to do. Also be realizing that you probably won't do it exactly like you had planned. There's that flexibility piece in there. And then to just be intentional about planning for equity, just using that equity lens as you go through your lessons and making sure you're providing places for all voices to be heard and places for relationship building to happen.
I love that tip for building in for equity, because I think that's sometimes something we just look over, and we really need to be intentional about giving our students opportunities to be a part of the classroom, have their voice be heard and shared. Now, you talk about work-life balance. I know in the book Magic Shine On, we talk about either choose one, go in early or stay late. Don't do both, meaning like stay till like 4 o'clock or something like that. And so choosing one, don't go in early and stay late. If you're, what's a way to help new teachers understand the importance of valuing their own time, their own personal time, because you need to have a life outside teaching. You need to take care of you as well as a new teacher. There's a lot going on and you have to take care of yourself. But you talk a little bit about work-life balance. Do you have any strategies to help with that?
I think this is something we do talk a lot about as in our mentoring. And I think it is, finding your rhythm, whether it is the morning or the afternoon, not both, or sometimes some people are they are a weekend. They're Saturday. I was that. I would go in on a Saturday happily, knowing that the rest of the days of the week I didn't do the morning afternoon, but I did all of it on a Saturday, and I felt fine about that. Everybody finds their way. So give yourself grace with that. The other thing I think that we help with work-life balance is just to sort of think about what is in your locus of control and what isn't. I often find that the teachers, when they're really, really stressed with work-life balance, it's because they're taking on, because they love their children so much, they're taking on and taking home things that are out of their locus of control. So it's just being really clear about if I do have control over this, then what do I want to do? And I do have control over when I come to school to plan or when I leave or when I plan. What do I not have control over? I might not have control over, the district directives or, things like that. So locus of control is a good one that kind of can lead to thinking about putting things in perspective and then giving yourself permission to just try to enjoy, the time that you have, whether it's like take a bath, take a walk, go to see if, visit with a friend. Like those are all good things that will ultimately affect your work and therefore your children.
I love how you're talking about these different perspectives. So, what is in your control? And we can list those. That's easy to do, but it's really hard to kind of let go of things that are out of our control as educators, because we, like you said, we invest in our students. They are our kids, and we want to take care of them the best that we can. But some things we just can't control, and that is okay to let them go. To let them go. Um, you're saying lots of great things, and I have so many follow-up questions, but we have a short amount of time for this podcast. So let me jump into engagement. Now, when we're entering that 2021 school year, we don't know what it's going to look like. We might be learning in traditional learning spaces, virtual or hybrid. What are some tips that you have for new teachers going into the field when it comes to engaging students in these different environments?
Well, I'm in our district is 100% remote. So that's been very interesting to see how our teachers are engaging our students. The successful teachers are investing in the relationship building, first of all. When there's that relationship, when they're investing in really taking time to get to know their children, whether through surveys, talking with them, engaging their families, then they use that lens as they're planning. So if the lesson is engaged, if the lesson itself is meaningful, if it's tailored and related to what this particular class enjoys or their interests, that's good planning, and good teaching can be engagement in and of itself. Then I think our new teachers are really, shining in the tech aspect of things. So they're using tools for engagement, realizing that the tool isn't the focus. It's, what do I want to get out of this tool? I want engagement. I want to get information on my children. I want lots of formative assessment opportunities. So they're using different things like Flipgrid or there's a gazillion of them. I'm sure or even our teachers are using Zoom. And so even just using polls and breakout rooms and things like that to get students talking to each other. So I think engagement is about relationships and knowing your students, and then working from that point.
I'm just sitting here nodding my head. I love that focus on relationships. We always tell our students relationships are number one, content second. Get to know your students. It's not just something you do that first day class, that first week. It's something that continues throughout your time with your students, because you're always learning and building that relationship, that positive relationship between students and teacher, and teacher to student. So all that positive energy can really feed into that content area and engage with them using those tech tools like you had talked about, focusing on the outcomes, standards, and then using the tech to help support them. Now, another big topic that comes up for our student teachers who just got done with student teaching in December, maybe they're starting a new role in January. For student teachers, they don't get a lot of communication or working with parents because that's usually what the host teacher, the mentor teacher does. What kind of tips do you have for new teachers to get comfortable with working with, not dealing with parents?
Yes, I love that you said working with.
Yes, we are partners.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that begins, as all these things do, with that self-reflection piece, to really sort of have the new teacher look into themselves. How do I ask themselves questions? How do I see my children's families? How do I value them? How do I see, what they do to support their child? And then how can I fit into that? And, to really, I think you have to believe, honestly, that the families are your partners, and that the parents, the families show up how they can. And so the new teacher needs to think about, how can I meet them where they are? And to not be afraid, and to always just relay that message to families that I love your child as much as you do. This is your precious baby in my care, and I want only the best. That has to be real. That has to really come from an honest place. And then I think too, it's using tools that work for parents or families. So for our teachers who are really successful with the parent relationships, the family relationships, they use text, they use Class Dojo, they use Remind as tools for, I think, frequent communication and positive communication.
Yes.
So they're sending pictures of the kids, and they're just keeping families up to date, and valuing, the things that families do.
I love how you talk about getting to know the families, working with them. We are partners. We want what's best for your child, and how can we help raise them up? I think that that's so beautiful. And this is just something that comes with practice. I think same with teaching. You're all new to it. It's okay. Just get to know those families, just like you would your students, and frame it as, we're here to support your child, and that's our main focus.
Yeah. I might add one thing that I sometimes see where teachers fall down a bit, and this is not just new teachers, but stay away from long emails. Emails should just be very, very short. when you have something to communicate, positive or a challenge, it's really important to try your very best to have a phone call or, of course, in person someday when we can be that again. I think that I've seen too often where it's just this back and forth of defensiveness. And realize that as a teacher, you will get emails from parents and families, and maybe they, were a little hot-headed, but just never, ever respond back. Give yourself some time to get to a space where you can speak with the families, and keeping that really positive sort of focus.
I love that. Thank you, Michelle. Now, let's talk about professional development. We know as teachers, learning does not stop when we cross that stage of graduation. It does not stop with that diploma, that certificate. What are some other strategies or resources that we can use to continue to develop as the professional educator that we are?
Yeah. I look at that kind of in 4 buckets in a way. So a huge amount of professional development will happen at your building level. So the school building itself, like that staff, they will provide a lot of PD, whether it's in just weekly meetings or whatever. There's also sort of like the larger maybe district place where there will be sort of mandated professional development to some extent. So there's always that. Then I think there's a larger world, and this is the one I'm interested in twofold. One, just always thinking about next steps. So realizing and loving where you are as a new teacher, but always keeping in mind, what do I need to do? What steps do I need to take for later? So that I always have options. I want to stay in education, but I might want to move to a coaching role, or I might want to, and so thinking, okay, so what are state certificate, requirements? What are, what further education for endorsements or a master's degree? Always making sure that that's, in your future, looking forward. And then I think also there's the social media, I guess, sort of role. What kind of podcasts are you listening to? Who are you following on Twitter or Instagram? What kind of opportunities are out there among even different groups, ASCD, or even some of the Corwin books, the publishing, they offer fantastic professional development. And then last, I think just learning from and with each other, just get into other people's classrooms, find your marigold and, stay, learn from your marigolds and from your mentor if you're lucky enough to have one.
Oh, Michelle, I love how you categorize those into 4 different areas, and they all have their benefits. They all have things to consider when pursuing those different professional development opportunities, especially when it comes to continuing your degree, a master's, certification, endorsement, whatever it might be. And some of the things that you do at your district level could help with continuing education credits or professional development hours. And these all really fold nicely together to help you become a well-rounded professional educator. These are fantastic.
Yeah, let me add one more that I'm super excited about. I'm right now just starting to do my national board certification, which is a very rigorous process. But everybody who's gone through it says it's some of the best professional development they've ever had.
Now that's something I've never done. I have looked into it. And tell me about that process. 'Cause I'm sure new teachers are listening out there like, wait, what is national board certification? What is this? Why do I need it?
It would be it's very similar to what many teachers have to do, which is, and I think I don't know if this is just our state, but it's called EdTPA. And
at TPA. Yes, we know.
Okay. So it's very similar. It's similar to that, but maybe it's been described as that on steroids. So it's 4 different components that include video and lots of teaching, and then lots and lots of reflection, and then writing about that in a very specific way, a very detailed, specific way. You can do it in a year. That would be the shortest time. You can break it up into 2 or 3 years, and it's just a real rigorous process of really doing a lot of really kind of deep reflection. And there's the national board standards. that have to be embedded in all that you do. And then one component, which happens to be one of the ones that is weighted heavily, is the actual test, an actual standardized test, which is multiple choice and then some like short answer. The rest of it, though, is just the work that you would be doing in a classroom, the differentiation, the instruction, the assessment, the working with colleagues and community, and then how you write about it. And then the other thing about it is that for some school states, like our state, you and a lot of people do this because of this, but it can be a significant pay raise. So it can be $5,000, or in our district, if you're at a school that is kind of considered a high needs, it can be an additional $5,000. But then some states have gotten rid of the money part completely. But I think, I think it's really worthwhile. You do have to have at least 3 years of teaching experience to even begin. And I would not start it as a 3-year in teacher. I think, you want to get a lot more under your belt before you start that process.
This has been such a great conversation, Michelle. I want to thank you so much for your time joining us and telling us all about these different tips for our new teachers, whether they're just starting out in January or when they graduate in May, maybe looking for a position in August. Thank you so much for your time today. This was great.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I just really, I respect you and the work that you do in getting our teachers ready.
Thank you so much. I'd have to say it's my dream job to work with our future educators and just raise up that next generation of educators of excellence. Thank you so much, Michelle. This was great.
And there you have it, EduMagicians. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends. For more EduMagic, check out sfessage.com and follow Dr. Sam on Twitter and Instagram @sfessage. Until next time, you have the EduMagic within you.